Howdy folks, Spencer here, and today I have a solo Infected Space Elite that I did with a plasma turret setup on my Dhailkhina Command Strike Wing Warbird. I did of course have the Maelstrom Torpedo alongside it, and the complex plasma fire trade off the Gorn Hunter, but the point is, the majority of weapons on the build are turrets, and I think this just really shows just how capable these plasma builds are with complex plasma fires, and also just how much power creep we've seen in the game in the past couple of years. So I'm gonna cut now to footage of me doing the run. There's no commentary over it. I had a couple attempts prior that didn't go so well, and then for this one, it did end up going through, and I do start talking afterwards, going over the build and recapping some things. So I will have timestamps down below. But for now, enjoy the run.
The situation is grim. All This is the Kobayashi Maru. Sensors confirm that the transwarp conduit has been destroyed.
Solo
However,
ISE
our
there
scans
with
of the
some
starbase are still
turrets.
being
Let's take a look at the parse. Up here. So it's not really a surprise, but the top damage source, especially on a plasma build like this, did end up being complex plasma fires. With an isomag setup and a lot of things behind it, complex plasma fires off the Gorn Hunter can do an insane amount of damage against targets that are alive for a long time. And that was one of the central points with this build is the turrets obviously are not going to have enough damage to do things on their own, but they can be used as a way to, make sure that everything around me is getting hit by those complex plasma fire procs. Then the turrets, obviously, they did their thing, which wasn't that much compared to what like a traditional dual heavy cannon setup would do. The Maelstrom did okay. The experimental weapon, as always, the plasma incendiary bombardment off of the Gorn Hunter did really good. The Lobby Store plasmatic biomatter auto defense turret did well. That has an ability baked into it where it'll like just passively shoot a secondary target around you if it's really close to you. So that's a really good weapon to have on a plasma build like this. And for the rest of it, nothing out of the ordinary there. The pets with one bay and not a ton of pet buffs on didn't really do that much. These were just the rare quality Todouche fighter squadrons, but I did have SAT on, but they still only did like 14.8k DPS. You just never get a ton of DPS out of a single hangar bay is typically what I see. For the healing, for myself here, the Valdor console, the shield absorptive frequency generator was obviously the big healing part of this build. Energy refrequencer, which is a reputation trait, did also help. The beta healed off from the Delta Operations Pack, Agent Iol. If you're on the Fed side, it's Agent Rule. That did give me a little bit of healing as well. The whole lot of X's trait, I think that only went off one time in the run, but that's a very good personal space trait to have for some survivability. Basically, if your health falls down to a certain point, it's giving you a really large heal, and it can go off once every 2 minutes. So that's a recent trait, and I don't think a ton of people have picked it up yet, but it is legitimately quite good for a situation like this. For the build, it's very similar to, well, it's based off of the like the isomag meta build guide thing that I put out back at the beginning of October. If you're looking to actually set up a high-end plasma isomag build, I would recommend you check that video out. This is, obviously running all turrets plus the Maelstrom torpedo. These are Viridians, spec'd to crit D damage for the epic mod and then damage times 4 for the other modifiers. So there's 5 of those turrets on the Maelstrom, and then that plasmatic biomatter auto turret from the Lobby store, because like I was saying before, it will fire an additional shot at a random target around you. So in theory, that's more complex plasma fire procs going out. So 6 of the plasma isomags, the Dhailkhina, overall is just one of my favorite ships right now. So that's one of the reasons that I've went for it. It also just has a really flexible setup that makes it work quite well for situations like this. For the consoles, the Lure Team Command off the Gorn Hunter, that is huge for the plasma, complex plasma fire trait. It just is a really good buff for that. Immolating Phaser Lance for universal designs. Sensor Phantom Projector off of the Cyclone that was recently added to the C store. This is a really good taunt. It does also have a good passive that you can get a big damage buff from if you're flanking your foe. The Shield Absorptive Frequency Generator console off of the Valdor. You can get that right from the ship vendor for like 75,000 dilithium if you don't want to pick up the legendary one. The Valdor is a T3 ship and it has that console, so if you're on a CSV build, you'll get a lot of shield healing from it. If you're on beam overload, you don't have enough weapon shots going out to really get a ton from that. The Graviton Displacer for some crowd control. This is one of the most impactful control abilities we have in the game. It will suck in everything around you when it works, and it does a very good job. It brings everything in front of you. You just want to make sure to not reverse when using it, because it will shoot enemies behind you. Then I had the Fakiri Torment engine on because that has buff for the plasma stuff. And I had been running the Lorca console, but I wanted to have just a little bit more survivability. And given that complex plasma fires is going to have an 8 shield pen on it, I felt I didn't need to have that extra shield pen that the Lorca console had, especially with me not having the 2-piece on for the crit D. I decided to just remove that console entirely for this run, put the DPRM on for some survivability. For the skill tree here, this is the standard skill tree that I've been running for a very long time. I'll probably do a video going over it again at some point, but I haven't really changed this in quite some time, and there's a full breakdown of it over on the Builds Discord in the skill tree channel that we have over there. Spec-wise, Intel primary, and the secondary is Temporal, because Temporal has some dot-related stuff, and this is a build that heavily relies on doing dot-based damage. For the traits, A Good Day to Die, Adaptive Offense, Intel Agent Attaché, Fragment of AI Tech, Unconventional Systems, though I did only have one uncon proc on here, Viral Impulse Burst. Duelist Fervor, Self-Modulating Fire, Parent Targeting, whole lot of X's for that survivability like I'd mentioned, Inspirational Leader, and even though I'm doing a full Ox to Bat setup here, I did have the Boimler effect on. I figure a little bit of redundancy, if that goes off, that just, is making sure everything's, back up on time. For the space rep, pretty standard advanced targeting systems. I did controlled countermeasures because I am running the cold-hearted trait off of the Breen Plesh Troll. So that's triggered by Ox to Bat, and it, from what I remember, it counts as a control because it does have some control effects on it. So basically every foe that I'm hitting should in theory be controlled, which then controlled countermeasures is going to be giving me a damage buff for. Precision for the crit chance, energy refrequencer for the healing that provides, and then Tyler's duality for the crit chance. For the starship traits, emergency weapon cycle, Withering Barrage, because I am doing a CSV build, complex plasma fires, again, that was a very large chunk of my damage. Cold-hearted for the debuff and for that interaction with controlled countermeasures. Superior Area Denial to buff my pet up a little bit, but more notably to get the debuff from it, because debuff is very influential in combat in this game. That's why a lot of high-end builds basically only ever run attack pattern beta. Debuff is huge. That's how a lot of the big DPS numbers happen. Ship of the line from the Legendary Avenger. I figured the crit chance would be, or the crit severity from this would be good. You can pre-stack this in the prep phase, which is why you saw me hit emergency power to subsystem abilities really early on. You can pre-stack it, and you can get up to 50% crit D from it. And then Universal Designs, which with Immolating Phaser Lance, if you time it right, this can get you 10% crit chance and 50 severity. So that's what I had set up here. Some people would prefer to probably drop Ship of the Line for some firing cycle haste, and that's a perfectly viable option. But I just felt like giving this a go. I've been enjoying Ship of the Line, and it's been working out pretty well for me. For the Bridge Officer setup here, like I had mentioned, I am doing an Ox to Bat setup, so I do have 2 copies of Ox to Bat 1, and yes, when it comes to the Duty Officer side of things, I do have 3 Ox to Bat Technician Doffs on. So I then have Emergency Powered Engines 1, Emergency Powered Weapons 3, Viral Impulse Burst 1 there, my only uncon, then OSS 3 for the power buff. The Ensign is a Hazard Emitters 1 just to cleanse some of the dots off me from the Borg. For the Commander Attack, Distributed Targeting 1, Attack Pattern Beta 1. And like I said, Attack Pattern Beta is basically the only attack pattern I use on 99% of the builds I build now. It just is the best attack pattern for most situations in this game in PvE. Torp Spread 3 for the Maelstrom, and then of course Cannon Scatter Volley 3. On the Lieutenant, I have a Fire at Will 1. That was just so, just to try and make sure, SAD had really good uptime. And I could also use that as a comp engine proc as needed. Then Chemosite 2. And I'm realizing I forgot to go over the deflector and all that. So deflector was the Elite Fleet Intervention Protomatter from the Colony. Then I had the comp engines, the innervated variant from the competitive reputation. Whenever you hit a firing mode, this basically gives you an evasive maneuvers. And then I had the Disco Rep, Singularity Core, and Shield on, because that two-piece is a very nice whole regen buff. And I feel like I'm forgetting something. I think that might be it. So yeah, that was an interesting run. I guess the rest of the DOS, I said the 3 Oxtabat techs. I did also have a Tyheth on. This is the KDF version of Keel-L. This is a Warp Core Engineer that has a 40% chance when you hit Emergency Power to Subsystem abilities to remove all debuffs off of you. But because of how the EPTX abilities work in the game, it's actually 4 chances every time you hit one of these Emergency Power to Subsystem abilities. So this stuff basically is going to go off basically every time you hit one of these. So it's basically a way to cleanse debuffs off of you every 15 seconds. The Fed version is Keel-L, Keel''E''L. And Tyheth here is the KDF one. I then had Agent Ayal on from the Delta Operations expansion pack. One of the Prodigy DOFs that they introduced a couple months back is similar to this, but not as good. But this is just giving you some hull healing when you fire your weapons while attack pattern beta is up. And then the emergency con hologram from the Phoenix store, because having your evasive up more is always beneficial to having a higher DPS number, and especially in a queue like Infected. So that's just a quick recap on the build that I had here, and of course the endeavors for me when it comes to the space side of things are fully maxed out. So if you're a brand new player, you try to replicate what I've done here. The endeavors are a huge impact on performance, and if you're a brand new player, you might have issue like clearing out that starting phase, especially like with how little time I had left. If I didn't have that 12.5% crit chance, the 50 severity, I may not have cleared it in time. So just keep that in mind if you're like a new player trying to replicate this build. So yeah, there's a solo ISE with the Dhailkhina and a turret build on it. Yes, there was a lot of other stuff like complex plasma fires and the Maelstrom torpedo, but the point is 6 of the 7 weapons on the ship there were turrets. So there's your turret run. Hope you enjoyed. And as always, thank you to all channel members and viewers for the continued support. See you guys around.